Streaming live, I believe, on Facebook. So we'll be getting started. Oh, it's right on the hour for our Power Hour. So welcome those people that are joining us right now. Looking forward to seeing others join us. Feel free to show your cameras so that we can see you. And we're going to have an interesting and informative chat about sales. Ooh. The scary S word. And I'm joined today by Sharon Francisco. I've known Sharon, I was just sitting here thinking how many years it is now, Sharon.
2000, oh, maybe it's before that, maybe 2012.
Yes, okay,
A
for a lot of years. First met Sharon when she was running a bookkeeping business. She's going to be introducing herself shortly. And then Sharon actually worked on the PB in the PB team for a couple of years as well. And so I know Sharon very well, very excited to have her join us today for the Power Hour. She's a guru about sales and will give us some insights and we'll have a little chat about it. So welcome Judy and Joe. Come along, anyone else that might be in the background there, come and join us. And welcome Sharon.
Yeah, thanks, Deb. I appreciate the time. Nice to see you, Judy and Joe. Feel free to put your cameras on so we feel like we're talking to somebody. Don't be shy. Yeah. Yeah, thank you very much, Deb. I was just thinking when you said how long ago that was, and I remember clearly how the phone calls to you were like a little lifeline. I'd go on and try to do as much as I could until I got stuck, and I'm like, oh, I've got to ring Deb. It was like a big lifeline for me. It was awesome.
Yeah.
I think I've heard this before with some of the licensees. It was just even a comfort to hear your voice, because we hear your voice throughout a lot of the in the pure bookkeeping system and stuff. So it's just, yeah, it was a reassuring voice back when I was not really sure what I was doing. So no, it was really good. So
yeah, awesome. So do you want to just tell us a little bit about your background for those people that don't know you and haven't seen you on online and other of our Power Hours? So just say a little bit about yourself and your background.
Yeah, sure. So my background has always been with business. So I've spent I hate saying this, it makes me feel old. I've spent the last 30 plus years
Yes.
around business. So I've either owned businesses or helped people grow their businesses. And hi Louise, how you going? Feel free to put your camera on. But when I came into the bookkeeping accounting space was when I joined my sister-in-law in her business in 2013 as a partner. And it was just tenure and a part-time bookkeeper at the time. And I'm not a bookkeeper or an accountant, so we sort of thought that we were a really good complement together. And we grew that business from just one and a half bookkeepers, I suppose, to 12 bookkeepers in the time that I was there. So my main focus, my background, and I guess really a natural skill set that I really honed to develop over the years was in sales, and I'm going to talk today about how that natural ability is in everyone, and it's just bringing it out to the forefront. So I really worked on building that business mainly through accountants meetings, referrals, and a strategic alliance that was very profitable. So those sort of areas, as well as a bunch of other little things, and I'll sort of go into a bit of detail about how all those little things add up to big things. It's just being really persistent with the process, as well as the HR side. So I worked heavily with the HR. I followed pure bookkeeping to a T. Essentially, I was recruited the bookkeepers and took them through our whole process, and made sure that they were fully up to date and knew what they were doing with the pure bookkeeping system, so I could just keep funneling the leads and new clients through to the bookkeepers.
Yeah, excellent. Now, before we get started, perhaps for the people on the call, Joe, Judy, Louise, if you don't have a camera, then I understand, but if you do, we'd love to see you. And we'd love to hear from you as well. So you're obviously on the call today because you want to know something about sales. So what are your pain points? That's what I'd like to know. And if you don't have a microphone, please put it in the chat box. And let us know what your pain points are around sales. What would you like to hear from Sharon today? And what advice or even a question that you might have? Feel free to pop it in the chat box or there's Susan. Welcome, Susan. And Terry's joining us as well. Awesome. Welcome, Terry. So we're just asking for contributions. If you've got any questions or pain points around sales, these can be answered at any time. But I'll hand over to Sharon. What's the first tip that you would give the viewers now?
Yeah, I think when we look at the domains of the business that are really clearly set out within pure bookkeeping, sales and marketing is marketing and sales is a domain of the business, and it's the one that you kind of like as bookkeepers just put aside. It's like, oh yeah, that's there, but let's not talk about that now, because bookkeepers really seem to see sales as a bit of a big hill to climb, and something that is, you can bury yourself in the doing of the work and easily just put that aside. And especially, if you can organically grow your business through referrals, and if you've got a couple of connections with accountants, you can really easily hide from honing the skill of sales and being consistent within that domain. Yeah. Why do you think, Deb, that bookkeepers hate sales? What is it that comes up that really is that fear? What do you think that is?
Yeah, we're mostly terrified by it. I think I could speak for, look, I'd say 98% of bookkeepers. I know I have actually met bookkeepers that love the whole sales and marketing thing, and they're a little bit extroverted. But typically, most bookkeepers are like me and a little bit introverted and like to just do a job in the back room there. And maybe a client might, every now and again, might throw a referral to us and we go, oh, that's great. So essentially our number one marketing strategy that we're most comfortable with is doing a good job, and then referrals will come. And it was only when I started working with Peter Cook as my business coach back in 2001 that he helped me understand what the domains of the business are. And that's leadership, management, finance, HR, sales and marketing, some of the domains of the business. And when he got to sales and marketing, I kind of shivered around that. And he could tell pretty early on in the piece that I didn't like to do it. And I think it's, I don't know, we kind of feel, and I'd love to hear what other people think, but we kind of feel a bit pushy if we're going, we're sales, sales is pushy. Let's not be pushy. We don't like to be pushy. Can anyone else relate to that? Anyone like to talk to that or put a chat? Oh, I see Louise has put in the chat box, 100% agree, it's terrifying. And she's also said, in regards to sales, it's just having the confidence to make the first approach. Anyone, feel free to unmute yourself and have a chat with us if you'd like to add some other comment to that. But that's really, it's fundamentally, we're terrified about it. And so to actually, it's a very easy thing, that's what Peter Cook discovered with me, to be too busy to do marketing, because you always, anything you don't really want to do, you're going to procrastinate about. Most people will procrastinate about. So when you just become too busy, and then that was definitely the strategy I used. But Pete was he was onto that, and we then needed to create all these other systems to make sure I followed the system and actually did what I needed to do.
Yeah, I think as you say, it's easy to avoid, especially if you're growing organically anyway. But that only gets you so far, doesn't it, when you're growing organically? Because to be able to really scale your business, and if you've got aspirations to sort of go to that yellow belt, blue belt, or even right up to the black belt. It's kind of a necessity to start getting into that space of learning the skill of sales. So for sure.
It is, and that's what I learned. It's the belts that you're referring to, for those people that are not familiar with that. In pure bookkeeping, we created what we call a martial arts metaphor, where we've got the belts being $100,000 is every belt, and it goes from white belt to black belt, where the white belt is $100,000, and then you put on $100,000 each year to get to black belt. And that's obviously, as in martial arts, that's the pinnacle. We've got licensees that have obviously gone further than that, but that's the goal. And Susan, I noticed you unmuted yourself for a minute there. Did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was going to say that sales can be awkward for me if it's face to face, and on the phone I'm quite good. I can talk really well to people on the phone, but with networking and things like that, it's like I go through the door full of confidence, and as soon as I see everybody, I just go, ugh.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know why I can do it on the phone and not face to face.
Yeah. Because people see your body language, and you're sort of there. It's like, front and center, isn't it? Like with the phone, it's just your voice. And I think we've all had that feeling where we walk into a room at a networking function and like your stomach stinks a little bit, yeah?
Absolutely. And interestingly, Susan, that's actually why I created the accountant presentation, which we're going to be talking about shortly, and the prospect presentation, for that exact reason, because I would go, in my mind, I would be fully prepared for what I'm going to say to the prospect or to the accountant, and I'm going to say this and I'm going to say that, and I would walk in the room and I would be like a deer in a headlight, just completely like this, and everything that I had planned went out the window. I forgot what I was going to say. I kind of fumbled my way through it, and that's the same for networking and that as well. And so again, when Pete discovered that about me, he realized, he said, Deb, we need to create a system. So we created this fabulous PowerPoint presentation. So I was actually finally able to relax. And then when I relaxed, knowing that I didn't have to remember what I was going to say, I had it there, the dot points there, and I remembered, once I was prompted by the dot points, I remembered what I was going to say. And then I was then able to engage with the prospect and engage with the accountant. So which is why my conversion rate went up, because of these accountant and prospect presentations. My conversion rate went up because I was actually doing more about listening to the prospect and listening to the accountant than I was about thinking about what I needed to say next. So I completely get what you're saying.
Yeah, for sure. So that brings me to, like, when in those sort of situations, we're going to talk to a few points to be able to help you with those meetings or networking meetings. And if you've been called by a client or potential client, you're going out for those meetings, just what to do to be able to help you through that conversation to ease it for you a little bit. And I think the biggest kind of secret for me that I realised, because remember, I'm not an accountant, I'm not a bookkeeper. So those meetings for me, and I know, I hear bookkeepers say that it's a fearful sort of thing to go and meet with, accountants as well. Times 10 for me, it was, I felt so nervous because I couldn't, at least you guys can speak the lingo around bookkeeping. I didn't even have that. So I had to figure out like a bit of a game plan of how I'd take the heat off myself. And so they didn't sort of talk to me too much about bookkeeping. So I developed a really strong skill of asking questions, which is really just coaching. So that really led me to where I wanted them to go, as far as my favourite question with potential clients was, tell me the biggest thing that you find frustrating around the bookkeeping that you're doing now, or that the bookkeeper's left. What was frustrating about the work that that bookkeeper was doing that you don't want to see any longer? Just any question that will direct them to think about how you can help them in a different way, if that makes sense. So, yeah.
I think we actually did, Sharon, the book club yesterday, which you can find a recording if anyone didn't see the book club about implementing value-based pricing. We did that yesterday. There's a recording of that on the Successful Bookkeeper Australia Facebook group. And it was about Ron Baker's implementing value-based pricing methodologies. And a huge chunk of his methodologies starts off with the questions that you ask the prospect. And if you only ask them bookkeeping questions like, what software are you using? How many staff do you have? When are you doing monthly or quarterly BAS? Are you on IAS, et cetera, who's your accountant? You won't actually be able to implement value pricing, or you won't implement it effectively because you don't know enough about the pain points that person is experiencing. As you've said, Sharon, what problem, where's your pain point around your bookkeeping? You're not talking about debits and credits. You're talking about how do they feel? What are their, and what are their goals? There's a whole section in Ron Baker's methodologies around the questions that you ask. And they're absolutely vital when you are in a sales conversation to ask questions other than bookkeeping ones, to find out about that person and have a curiosity around that.
Yeah, absolutely. Did anyone want to make a comment to any of that, of how with the meetings, what sort of questions you're asking, what you find challenging about those meetings? You'd like to contribute?
Welcome, Annette. Feel free to show your camera, and Judy as well. If you've got, Sharon's here to answer any questions you have, or to help you work through your pain points around sales conversations as well. So feel free to join in.
The other thing that I always find really reassuring is the study that was done around the different ways we portray our message. And I think we really worry, and this is sort of speaking to you, Susan, when you go into those networking functions, like, oh, what am I going to say? Because you feel like what you say is the most important thing in sort of meetings. Like if I have just the right, I think the terminology is elevator speech, or if I say just the right thing in that meeting with that potential client, I'll win them over. If I say just the right thing to the accountant, they're going to start referring to me. And it's a really interesting statistic that 55% of the way people receive you and your message is your body language. So actually how you walk into that room, how you're holding yourself is going to have more impact than the words you say. So the words you say, so the next one is tonality. Tonality is 38% of how your message is received. The actual words that you say is 7%. And what we generally do before we go to our meetings, we practice what we're going to say, and we all do it. We go, we want to get the speech or the script down pat before we go in. And we forget about putting your shoulders back and striding into the room with confidence, because all that shows when you're walking into an accountant's appointment, all of that body language tonality is giving off these subtle messages to the people that you're about to talk to about how much you back what you're about to say. And your body language and your tonality really has a big impact on that, on how they perceive what you're selling to them. And even in the conversation of what you're saying, that's like, well, how believable is that? Is that body language she or he is holding up matching the words that she's saying? I thought that was really interesting. You don't think about that, do you?
Yeah. And when I think about that now, it's a very interesting stat that I know I was in BNI for 4.5 years, and they used to say or they probably still say now, that people don't actually remember what you say very, very, like if you go away 2 minutes later, they're not going to remember what you actually said. but they're more likely to remember because, oh, that was that woman that walked into the room and she did this and da da da. And oh, I can't remember what she does exactly, but I might make an appointment and have a conversation with her. Yeah, very interesting. Terry, you unmuted yourself just before. Did you have a comment?
I was actually going to say about my biggest problem is elevator pitch. Elevator pitch, is it? No, elevator. Pitch.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so I don't have one.
I reckon with it, I talk a lot about this in my program with the elevator pitch. Is it like generally, and I'd like to hear more, because I know there's been a discussion online about BNI lately too. Yesterday, I think I saw, Deb, that you were, I'd like to talk a little bit more about that as well, because a lot of people talk about BNI. Is it worth it? Isn't it worth it? But I reckon with any chance you get to talk about yourself and the services you offer, try to make it stand out a little bit. If you can make it sound a little bit different and a little bit interesting with your content, or your pitch of what you say, make it grab attention rather than, because when you're at those sort of events and people talk about themselves, you kind of zone out a little bit. I don't know about you. Do you zone? I don't know. I zone out a little bit. Whereas if somebody gets up and sort of really, and especially with that whole body language tonality stuff, somebody gets up with a bit more of a different approach, and it doesn't have to be, crazy unique, just a little bit different to other people, I think is the, and if you can add a story, so you can talk about, hey, this is what I do. If you can say, like the time I was working with a client and you tell a little story about what you did for that client, people straight away are going to be, hey, Terry, that's interesting. And then they picture themselves in that story of what you can do for me. So telling a story makes it super, super interesting, I think.
Yeah.
So BNI, Deb, what are your thoughts on BNI around getting the value out of going to BNI and getting those referrals through?
Definitely. I would say from a dollar point of view in terms of income received, it was good enough for me. It wasn't, a windfall or anything like that, but it was I learnt so much else about BNI that had a value to me that was even far greater than the dollar. You've got to make it worthwhile. Like it costs money and it's not cheap to invest in that every year. And you've got to make sure you've got to factor in your time, how much, if you're going to BNI and you're not getting billable hours and things like that, it's got to pay its way at least. And it did that by far for me. There was no question about the value, the dollar value, but what I learned about public speaking, getting confidence. I didn't even know what networking was when I joined BNI. I didn't know if there was a thing. I didn't know it was necessary. I didn't know how to do it. I just turned up because I actually remember speaking to my neighbour and I said, they're starting it. In fact, I helped start a BNI chapter in my suburb because someone approached me and I asked my neighbour, is this worthwhile doing? And he said, oh, yeah, networking, yeah. You go and do the networking. So we started this chapter, and I didn't say boo to a goose in those days. To actually walk into a room, it's like that with a bunch of people, Susan, I fully get that whole, I'd be like this. And what I felt that I had to do in order I had to become kind of a different person. It wasn't comfortable for me. I would have rather run away and go back into my room and just get on with the work. It was almost, this thing at the back of my neck where I thought, just get out. This is too much. But I don't know. I taught myself to just do it. Just get in there and do it. Yes, you'll muck it up. Yes, you'll say the wrong thing. You'll walk out later and you'll go, oh my goodness, why did I? You'll make mistakes, but it's only when you make mistakes, you get out there. Louise said at the start about having the confidence to make the first approach. Confidence doesn't come by thinking about it or preparing for it and having a beautiful script. It only comes by taking action. And it's hard. It's hard to do, but you've just got to do it. It was like the sort of thing I just had to do it. I had a vision. I wanted to grow my business for a particular reason. I have to do things that I'm not comfortable with. Otherwise, I may as well go back and get a job and work as an employee where I don't have to face all these difficult things and face these challenges all the time. It's part and parcel. I think if you realize that it's part and parcel, or accept it, that of being uncomfortable is part and parcel of growing your own bookkeeping business, because all we want to do is we want to be the technician in Michael Gerber's terms, and that's all we want to do. But that's not all you have to do. There's all the other domains of the business. If you just want to be a technician, then go and work for someone so that you can devote your time to staying in your comfort zone and doing that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, Deb, knowing your why is really important in this story. And I know we talk about this a lot, and we talk about, I've talked a lot about planning in the last few weeks for 2021. If the clearer you are with what you want to achieve and the why that underpins that planning, kind of, do you feel like that drives you to do things that you wouldn't ordinarily do? So you've got that goal. I spoke with somebody before I came on this call. We were doing a strategy session. The vision that this woman has is so big. It blew me away when I read it, when I was doing the prep for the call. It's a really big, beautiful vision. And then I started talking to her about the strategy to be able to do that. And obviously, getting out and going to networking. And she said, she's done a 10-minute speech to the local chamber and such. And I said, how did that feel? And she said, it scared me half to death.
Yeah.
And I said, but with the vision you've got, how does that line up with that? And she said, I just know that I've got to do it. And it's the same as what you're saying, Deb. It's kind of like, yeah, it does scare me. And it's a hard thing to get over. But if your vision is big enough and your why is big enough, you kind of just sort of have to roll with it, don't you?
You just have to do it. And my vision, as many of you know, was to replace my husband's income. And I had a vision to do that in 10 years from when I started my business. And I mean, that's pretty big. That's a pretty big vision. And whenever I thought about, no, I don't want to go to a networking meeting. No, I don't want to have that conversation with that client. No, I don't want to. I just don't want to. I kept coming back to the vision. And for me, it was actually giving up on my husband. So, and wow, you're not going to do that. So, that definitely the vision, it's like you've just got to, I don't know, face it, mature. You've just got to, otherwise, as I say, go and get a job. But the vision is absolutely critical, because as you grow your business, sales and marketing is not the only challenge you're going to face. Not the only thing the only way you're going to step out of your comfort zone. There'll be lots of other things that will challenge you to step out of your comfort zone. Now, when I was growing my business, Peter Cook he jokingly said he made it his personal mission to take me out of my comfort zone as often as possible. And but I am forever thankful to him for that. Because the interesting thing about every time you step out of your comfort zone, it increases the circle. So if you're in here, inside your comfort zone, and you step out of that, the circle gets bigger. So next time you go to a networking meeting, or the 10th time you go, the dozen, whatever it is, the next time you go to a networking meeting, that bit that you were fearful of at last time, you think you walk in, oh, this is okay. I know what's going to happen here. And each time you step out of your comfort zone, that circle just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And so it's not like you're always faced with the same thing. It's not like you will forever be nervous when you're entering a network. I mean, you might be a little bit nervous. There's that little bit of adrenaline, but it's not like you're going to be frozen like that deer in front of the headlights. you go, oh yeah, I know what this feeling is. In fact, actually, it just reminds me, that feeling is fear, and it's in the pit of your stomach where your stomach feels like it's turning inside out. And I used to run away from that whenever I felt that. And I think it's to do with the flight or fight, thing that we've got going on in humans. And when, the fear, if you, back in the caveman era, if a bear was coming to eat you or a tiger was coming to attack you, you'd get this fear mechanism in your stomach, which was valid. And so you would go, I need to either get my sword or get my stick or something and fight this animal, or I'm going to run. And you weigh up which one's which. The thing is, we've still got that going on inside of us as humans, and we put way too much emphasis or meaning on what that feeling is in the pit of your stomach. So I changed the message that I was telling myself. And whenever I felt that, I went, I know what this is. This is fear. I'm actually scared. So I then taught myself not to run away from it. I said, right, the sooner you face your fear, whatever it is that you're afraid of, and do it and get it done, then you'll realize that nothing bad has happened. No animals eaten me alive or anything like that. I'm still alive. Nothing bad's happened. And my circle of comfort has now increased. And so that I identified fear and I turned it to, well, this is exciting. And so instead of saying, I'm scared, I'd say, oh, this is exciting. I'm going to, I wonder who I'll meet today. And go out from there.
And it takes, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, isn't it? So once you step into it, it actually builds more confidence, because you see familiar faces, and then you get a bit of a kick out of, like, when you're doing, Terry, when you're doing that elevator speech and you've done it a few times, and then you sort of add in, you do something that you feel comfortable with to begin with, which is usually pretty scripted. And then you start stepping out of that a bit and you get a little bit more animated and you build with that. And that's when when your confidence starts building. And because you've built that confidence, slowly it starts feeding more and more. So you build from there. So actually taking the step is the way to building the confidence in itself. And it doesn't have to be perfect. So we've got a question come through.
Yes.
When you're new, and from, where is this from? Who is this from?
Nicole.
Oh,
yes. Can you see that question?
Yeah, I've got it. So
go ahead.
When you're new and haven't met with a potential client before, there's also a fear that you get one chance only out of everything in the meeting. Yeah, I get that. I worry that there are questions I don't know I should be asking. So how do you get the confidence when maybe they notice you haven't asked them some of the things that other bookkeepers have asked them? I think you're putting too much pressure on yourself, Nicole. I think the main thing is the connection personally. I think there's no such thing as the right thing to ask. It's really around, remember that whole tonality and body language is what's going to get them to buy, to have the right question. And this comes up a lot of the times with sales training. You feel like you have to say the right thing, and you don't. It's a conversation where you're just asking them questions about what's frustrating them in the business, around their bookkeeping. And then you are listening for cues around what is frustrating them. So then you get to speak into that about how you would handle that situation. So it's kind of asking a string of questions that don't have to be the right questions. You're just having that backwards and forwards sort of conversation of asking questions, they're answering it, and they're starting to get a sense of who you are and what sort of, that's when you start bringing in, the biggest thing for me was having the pure bookkeeping system, because I couldn't talk bookkeeping. I would rely on our process that we take new clients through. So any sort of meetings that I'd have, okay, so this is our process that we take people through. These are the bookkeepers we have. this is the pure bookkeeping system we follow. And I just showcased everything that we did with the pure bookkeeping system. So that was kind of my security blanket. Whenever I felt like I was going off into a tangent and not saying the things, Nicole, that I thought I should be saying, I had that as my security blanket to be able to say, hey, and we're fully systemized. Each of our bookkeepers have gone through the skills test and they've gone through the whole process to get them to where they are. They would do 100 billable hours with us in the office. So they could be then confident to know that whoever I was assigning them to had gone through this beautiful long process through our system, system with pure bookkeeping to give them the confidence. So you kind of, after a while, and it's like with the BNI, Deb, after you do a few, you start getting a bit of a thing down pat that you feel a lot more comfortable about. And I don't know, I know the feeling of like, I've got to get this client, I've got to get this one. But clients, it's not going to be the end of the world if you don't get that client. The deal of a lifetime comes around the corner every week. So as long as you've got that consistent sales and marketing activity, it's consistent marketing activity going, you're going to be filling those leads in the funnel. So yeah, I don't think there's any, what do you think, Deb? Any special sort of thing that you can say?
Yeah, no, I agree with you completely. And so that's reassuring for you, Nicole, that don't put so much pressure on yourself. The way I think of marketing, when we talk about, marketing is when you're putting yourself out there, you're meeting with people. A sales conversation is when you actually close the deal, kind of thing. So when you're doing your marketing, the way I look at it is that you're sowing lots of seeds, and so long as you keep sowing seeds, something will pop up somewhere. And the best thing you can do for yourself, I agree with Sharon, just about everyone has a tendency when they're starting out to say yes to everyone. And I get that, and I did as well. So I think don't beat yourself up over that as well. But learn from the experience of other people around you and what you're hearing in other communities and things like that, to try to be selective. And the reason you can be selective is because you've created momentum around your marketing. So you're just constantly sowing seeds. You've got a Facebook page, you've got a website, you're going to networking meetings, you're doing door knocking, you're doing letterbox drops, telling everyone that that you're open for business. It's it's an interesting thing, that something you think is basic that people would do, but they forget to tell their family and friends that they're actually looking for referrals. And can you please have a look for, like, they might know that they're a bookkeeper and they've got their own business, but they don't realize that they can help you get referrals. And the more more people you've got on your team, on your marketing team, the more likely you are to get referrals from them. So, and it's with creating momentum. Peter Cook used this analogy one time when we were running a seminar, and in where we live, if you were to try to catch, let's say you're walking to the train station to catch a train, and it's a Sunday afternoon. Now, I don't know what it's like in all states around the country, but I assume it's similar where we live, and in Victoria. And if you see a train at the station in Victoria and it's a Sunday afternoon, you bolt for that train because you know that it's going to be 45 minutes till the next train comes along. So you absolutely bolt. But if you're in Singapore, those trains come every 20 minutes all round the clock. So if you see a train on the station, you go, it mightn't even be 20 minutes. It might be 2 minutes. I can't remember. It's some ridiculously frequent time. And so you go, it's all right, I'll just catch the next one, because you know another train is only 2 minutes or it's 20 minutes away. So that's what creating momentum around your marketing does. It means that if you meet with a prospect and you feel like that didn't go well, or they didn't agree to work with you or something like that, you go, look, another one will be coming, because I've created momentum around the marketing.
Yeah, nice. I'm wanting to share with you now some really, I think, mind-blowing stats on sales. So the first one is 80% of sales require 5 follow-ups. So I just want to talk about a follow-up. So when you meet with a client, and I've been doing this for years, not even really knowing it. A terminology came up about 12 months ago that I'd heard for the first time. So when you meet with a potential client and they say, hey, I just want to think about it, or I need to talk to my business partner, or whatever diversion that they've got until you speak to them next time, it's really easy to go, oh, yeah, no, that's no problem. I'll follow up with you next week. I'll talk to you later. No problem. Take all the time you want. And what we fail to do in those meetings is book a meeting for the follow-up at that time. It's one of the most powerful things that I've learned. So we call it BAM-FAM, book a meeting from a meeting. So write that down, BAM-FAM, book a meeting from a meeting. So if 80% of sales require 5 follow-up calls after the meeting, 44% of people give up after the first meeting. So look, I don't like to be pushy, just like the next person. But I also know that people are busy. And what happens if you don't BAM-FAM them, if you don't book a meeting from that first initial meeting when they say they need to think of it, what happens, and we between our ears, we play all these little games about, people avoiding us and things like that. And it's actually not true. It might be in some cases, but most of the time it's not. So if you go ahead and not book a meeting with them next Tuesday at 10 o'clock, well, whenever you've agreed to meet with them, you ring them up next week when you sit down and go, all right, I'm going to start following up my meetings. You ring them and they don't answer. You leave a message and you say, hey, can you give me a buzz back just following up on our meeting last week? So these people, we know how busy they are, right? And we know how much we personally don't return calls when we're busy. But what game we'll play in our head is that they're avoiding us. So even if we did get brave and ring again in a week or two, which most people don't, and we know that by the stats, and they're still busy, or you leave another message or you text and they don't respond, the game you play in your head is, okay, so they really don't want me now. So that's kind of all gone then. The opportunity with that client's all gone. The reality is most of the time, because obviously I've been in sales and I know, the amount of times people have said to me, I'm so pleased that you were persistent, Sharon. I'm so pleased that you were persistent. So people are just busy. So don't think that it's you. But to make life easier for yourself, BAM-FAM. And I had it up on my wall for ages, BAM-FAM, book a meeting from a meeting, because you'll play that game and you'll play all these little sabotage things in your head about people not wanting to work with you. The second one is, and I want to talk to you a little bit about this, about what your approach with this is, Deb. Business owners who ask for referrals get 4 or 5 times more than those that don't, which sounds like a very obvious stat. But can you talk about referrals, Deb? I know we sort of chatted about this before a bit offline. Tell me about your experience with asking for referrals.
Yes, I didn't want to do it, is the short answer. Again, well, you mentioned, pushy and things like that. I think it's my fear, and it's the fear of, I think, most Aussies really, that they don't want to be pushy. They don't want to be salesy, and to me, that was the message I had given myself, that I didn't, when the clients gave me referrals, it wasn't because I asked for it. Initially, it wasn't because I asked for it. It's just because I did a good job, and they gave, said, I know it's someone else who needs you, so here's another referral. I go, great. But it was, I didn't ask for it because I felt like, oh, that's a little bit pushy, and it was uncomfortable. I'm not even sure whether I consciously thought about that until Peter Cook said you need to ask all your clients for referrals. And I went, really? What do you mean ask them? Do you mean actually ask them? Or and he said, yes, actually ask them. And I'd go away and say, okay, I'll do that. And of course, I got too busy and didn't do it because I felt uncomfortable about it. And he would come back and say, we would track the new clients that I got in that particular month, and he'd say, okay, how did you get this one and that one? Oh, you're not getting very many referrals or this month from your clients, well, I haven't actually asked them directly. So I've got to actually ask them to I keep going back over the same thing. And so what we did was he realized sooner rather, thankfully, that I was avoiding anything to do with marketing or anything like that. So we had to create a system. And the way we did that was in my engagement letter, I actually had, there are 2 pages actually, and they're still in the current PB engagement letter, but they are 2 pages. They started off as a 2-page engagement letter for my clients, and it was all about our relationships. And one was my commitment to them, and the other page was their promise to me. And it was things like, you promise to follow systems that I've set up to get the work to me at the frequency agreed, because I've figured that and all of these things would, if it didn't happen, would break down our relationship. So I picked these key elements of the things that were most important. But for me to actually, on the bottom of that, I put, you will, on their side, their promise to me, I will actively look for referrals for you when I, as suitable kind of thing. Can't remember the exact wording of it now. I used to know it off by heart. But I put that, and so these were dot points that I read. So I said, you promised this, and I would get down to the bottom, and I actually remember even now, thinking back, I get sweaty. Thinking, I'm getting to the bottom of these dot points and I'm coming up to the bit where I need to ask them for a referral. And I would actually feel sick when I got to it. But I had to read it out because I was reading out all the others. And so I got to this and read out that you will look for referrals to me where possible. And the first time I read that, I was kind of waiting to see what the reaction was. I thought, oh, they're going to get angry. Are they going to say, what are you doing? I'm not going to, blah, 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 because that's what I was afraid of. And not one person ever took offense to that, didn't even make any. In fact, they said, oh, sure. If you do a good job for me, because I haven't even started working for them yet. If you do a good job for me, I'll be happy to refer other business to you. And I was like, really? Oh, okay, that wasn't so hard. And the more I did that, it would then just became part of, again, the circle, getting bigger and bigger. And I realized that what I'd imagined in my head was completely false. It wasn't based on anything. It was based on something that was going on in my head. It was crazy.
Fantastic. And when you know that the stats are 4 to 5 times more likely to get a referral when you ask for it, gosh, that, Deb, that piece of paper, I think that's why when I just saw the pure bookkeeping system and went, you know what? And because I didn't have any filters of like, this is the way I do bookkeeping, I just grabbed that system and ran with it. And that paper was in my sign up process. And I literally went through, like you, point, read it out, point. It was the best sheet for me because it kept me on track. But it also, what was fantastic about that is framing up how you're going to work with that client. So and I'd get them like you did, sign here, and I'm going to, and so this is what I'm going to do for you, and then I'd read my commitment to you, and I'd sign, I'd go, okay, I'm going to give you a copy of that. And it was just the most beautiful piece of IP that I used over and over and over to my advantage. And that asking for referrals is, a really key question, as we know from these stats. But also you can use the same process with asking for testimonials as well. So when I would go to do a presentation for a new client and also for accountants, having those testimonials from your clients is really important as well. And just the same thing, a lot of people avoid asking for testimonials, but and I know a way that I used to do it, because again, people are busy and it's, a little bit awkward to ask for testimonials sometimes. I always offer to write the testimonial or a shell of a testimonial for them. And so at least then they've got the beginnings of something, and then they can tweak it to however they want. And most people say yes to that. So I'll have a few little sort of shells of a testimonial that I'll send through. So that makes it easier for me. do it.
Yeah, because you know the person. So let's say you've been working with the client for 6 months or more, 12 months or something. You know that person. You would have even heard them say, "Oh my goodness, you're the best thing since sliced bread. Before you, it was this, and now it's this." So you've got all these. I definitely agree, and that's what I do. That's what I did in my bookkeeping business, and that's what we do with Pure Bookkeeping as well. We've got licensees that say all these fabulous things about Pure Bookkeeping, and when I'm having a conversation with them. And so I then draft up a testimonial based on what they said, send it to them, because I don't know if anyone has written a testimonial for anyone. For me, it's like a good 30, 45 minutes. And then I might read it again the next day and a couple of days later before I send it off. People really don't have that amount of time. They love you, they think you're awesome, but they would love you even more if you would just draft a testimonial for them and send it to them for their approval, because they'll go, "Oh, look, they feel bad about it." If you ask them for a testimonial, they go, yes, I've got it on my list. I will get, and then they start to feel bad about it because a month passes and 2 months passes and they haven't done it yet. So it creates a bad feeling. They want to say good things about you, but they want to word it carefully so that it's the right kind of testimonial that you need. So that's a great piece of advice, to actually draft one yourself. Talk to your clients first, obviously, and say, "Listen, I'd love to I know you're really happy with my services. I'd love to get a testimonial from you. Would you mind if I drafted one for you? I've got an idea of the sort of things that you like about what I do and how we do certain things, blah, blah, blah. Could I draft one for you and send it to," and I look, if anyone, no one would object to that. No one that I was dealing with has ever objected to that. They've actually been grateful for it.
Yeah, and look, the amount of bookkeepers that we talk to, Deb, I know I hear story after story after story about how the bookkeepers' clients love them. And you know, that they say it, the bookkeepers tell me all the time, "My clients love me." And, you know, just put that love in writing, please.
Yeah, that's it.
There's something I want to talk to you about that too, is around personal branding, and how I think to ease this whole discussion and pain around sales is to really, I think, showcase the personality of the typical bookkeeper. And knowing that, like, for me, being a salesperson, my personality actually, I think, a lot of the times can be a hindrance with sales, because it's like, because I talk fast and I'm energetic, and people go, "Oh no, too much," you know. I think, and you know, I can't help that because it's my personality. So I've got to find a way to make that work in my sales environment. And, you know, the reason why I think, and I talk to, you know, with my coaching with accountants in the last 12 months, helping them to sell advisory, and I'm going to say the same thing in this environment, because bookkeepers and accountants are very similar in their approach, because they hate sales. They don't want to ask for testimonials and referrals. They're very humble about their approach. And there is something really, really likable about that. So using that as an advantage, if you like. So knowing that, and people know that about bookkeepers and accountants. They know that you're quiet and that you're not going to be pushy and all the things that you don't want to be. People know that you're not going to be like that. So any little skerrick of stepping into that, asking for a referral or talking about, you know, in a sales meeting, they're actually going, they're not expecting you to be too pushy. You're never going to be too pushy, because you're not. And it's actually to your advantage. So knowing that about your personality, and then really developing and stepping into your personal brand, so that's who you are, is really powerful. So knowing what's unique about you and showcasing that to people is really powerful within a meeting. So I wanted to just tie that with, you know, that lovely one pager, and when you ask for a referral at the bottom, and when you think, "Oh, I'm getting to that point," you know, you as a bookkeeper asking for that, it's not pushy. It really isn't pushy. It's just gentle and lovely, and people welcome that. It's not sort of a thing that they're going to push back on.
And one thing with that, Sharon, just before you go on, another thought was one of the ways I convinced myself that it was okay and it wasn't pushy is that I often referred business to my clients. You know,
Yeah.
and I thought, well, I'm referring business to my clients, and they're very pleased with that. Why wouldn't I ask them for a referral and myself?
Yeah.
And why do I, you know, so you've just got to change the language that you're going on in your head and the conversation that's going on in there. It's not helpful.
So much of that, you know, if you could put a dollar figure to our self-sabotage that we do in our heads, gosh, you know, there's a line that I heard years ago: work harder on yourself than you do on your business. And gee whiz, I subscribe to that. If you're working harder on what goes on in here and all that stuff that happens with self-sabotage, and should I ask for a referral or shouldn't I? Shouldn't I pick up the phone to follow up with that client? You know, if you could monetize that, I wonder how much extra that would add.
Yeah.
Gosh. And that's where, like, to me, I think, you know, it's so important to work on yourself. That mind stuff is really important to delve into and to be consistent with. The last stat is after meeting a client, 63% of customers remember stories. And I had a session yesterday. I was talking to somebody about this. So anything that you can bring in, and like with the networking, anything that you can bring in that's going to keep you memorable from that meeting is going to be a lot easier for you when you're doing the follow-up call. So they attach that story to you, and then you become more memorable. So coming up with some really unique stories is really good. Did you use stories at all, Deb, when you were?
Yeah, definitely, and especially in BNI, because BNI is all, because they're once, I'm pretty sure they're still once a week, those meetings, and you build relationships and trust over time, and you've got to be telling them different stories, because otherwise it's, you know, if you just say, look, I'm a bookkeeper, there you go, end of story. You know, that's not, they will try to put you in a box and say, oh, you're a bookkeeper, then you are like this, or you do this. Whereas most business owners actually don't know what bookkeepers do. So if you can bring in that story and bring in different stories, particularly at networking meetings where you are building relationships, the ad hoc ones, even the ad hoc ones, because so they're the ones that might be once a month or just every now and again. If you are really engaging with someone, particularly one-on-one in a conversation, even an ad hoc one, to finish off with a story. Oh, that reminds me of when I had this client, as you said earlier, Sharon. It's very powerful.
Yeah. And to follow up on that stat, only 5% remember statistics and numbers. So only 5%. And so as bookkeepers, our comfort zone, or I say I'm not a bookkeeper, but the comfort zone is numbers. So when you're in front of somebody, a potential client, you know, you're wanting to be thinking stories rather than this is what I do. This is the numbers. These are the numbers things that I do. Tell a story rather than talk about the numbers.
Well, and definitely it's like really most business owners, they don't understand the balance sheet. They don't understand the language that we use. They don't understand. All they ask is, if that's my profit, where is my money gone? And so if you actually, in a networking or in a marketing context, if you talk about all these fabulous numbers that you crunch and all this sort of thing, they're going to glaze over. Because they can't relate to that at all.
And feel intimidated too, Deb.
Yeah.
Like I found listening to Tanya talk, I used to feel intimidated. I was like, oh man,
Yes.
I don't even know what is all that. I don't know. It's a lot. Like it is, but for a business, and I've owned businesses, so, and I've grown businesses. So it's really, it's a different way to think. The way bookkeepers and accountants think, it's different, and it's not. You know, it's not the way business owners generally, on a general rule, understand.
And if you don't take the time, like we started off right at the start talking about the questions that you ask in a prospect meeting, if you don't take the time to understand what's important, to ask questions which help you understand what's important to that person that you're speaking to, you can't possibly present the answer because you actually don't know what the question is. So
Yes.
you've got to actually find out what are their drivers, what are their pain points, what's important to them. And when you're armed with that information, you can then look at the suite of services that you provide. And then rather than saying, we talk about, again, this is Ron Baker, implementing value pricing. Don't talk about the features. Don't talk about that you do profit and loss and balance sheet to trial balance and bookkeeping, Talk about how that's going to benefit the client, and you link that benefit back to the pain point. So if they say, I've completely lost, like my business might go under, cash flow is an enormous issue. If you don't know that and you just talk about, this is what I do and these are the features and I can do all these wonderful things, they'll go, how is that relevant to me? How is that actually going to solve my pain point where I've got a problem with cash flow? I don't know what all that stuff means. And if your marketing message is about all this stuff that they don't understand, they're going to look for the next bookkeeper that's actually can solve their problem. Does this solve my problem? I don't know, because I don't know what that means. Yeah. So have your marketing message so that it's expressed in, and also your marketing means the words that you use, your printed marketing, your online marketing, all of that expresses how you solve people's problems, not what you do.
Yeah, I love that. Love that. We're at time.
We're at time. This is awesome. I feel like we could go for another hour.
I know, me too.
Who would have thought I'd actually turned into a sales and marketing person? There you go. My circle's about this big now.
Love it. That's awesome.
Thank you very much, Sharon, for your insights. We may have you back. We will have you back actually next year. Talk more about sales. Find out. I don't think we can hear enough about this. It's all little seed sown. It's a little bit of confidence. Just take one thing that you've learned from today and apply that in your marketing, in your sales conversation. Don't walk away from this and say, that was useful. Take one thing and apply that to your marketing, to improve things, to change things, to grow your circle, to move out of your comfort zone and make that circle larger and larger. So Sharon, we will definitely have you on the Power Hour right throughout the year next year. So thank you very much for joining us. Thank you everyone who was present today. If you're watching the recording, I hope you found this helpful. When it's on, it'll be uploaded there soon. And we look forward to another Power Hour next week. Bye for now.
Thanks, Deb. See you everyone. Thanks for coming. Bye.